Sources say FBI Director Kash Patel has fired at least 10 employees tied to the investigation into President Trump's handling of classified documents. The firings stem from an internal review Patel ordered after learning the FBI subpoenaed his and Susie Wiles' communications. Those subpoenas came from a 2022 probe led by Special Counsel Jack Smith when both were private citizens. Patel called the subpoenas outrageous and deeply alarming, and the spokesperson for Smith declined to comment.
Hi friends, Adam is here. Stop what you are doing right now. Because what just happened in that House hearing room is not the kind of political theater that fades by the next news cycle. This is the kind of testimony that builds the documentary record of a cover-up. And the man at the center of it, the FBI director himself, sat under oath for nearly 5 hours and admitted things that his own previous words prove he knows are indefensible.
The second document that I want to submit to the record, for the record, I know we don't usually read these. This one's not readable. It's completely redacted. For the most part, the first 50 pages. This is actually the search warrant that was served on James O'Keefe for a diary that he had already given to the government 2 months before. And as it turns out, there were no indictments here, yet he still doesn't know why he was raided, and I think he deserves to know. So,
objection.
Kash Patel, the president's most trusted law enforcement official, the man Trump installed to clean house at the FBI. And in September of this year, he walked into a congressional hearing and gave sworn testimony that is now being characterized by the members who questioned him as amounting to a de facto admission of complicity in the most consequential cover-up story of the entire second term. What did he admit? That he has not read all of the Epstein files. That court orders are blocking him from releasing thousands of records.
Director, the first time you saw Donald Trump's name was in the Epstein files. Did you close the files or keep reading?
I have reviewed not the entirety of the files, so
you haven't reviewed all of the Epstein files?
Personally, no.
You're the director of the FBI. This is the largest sex trafficking case the FBI has ever been a part of. Buck stops at the top, and your testimony today is you have not reviewed all the files.
What I've been doing is been busy providing the safest country this country has seen in modern U.S. history in historic speed, because the men and women of the FBI are given the resources to reduce the homicide rate, to reduce the drug trafficking rate, to reduce the amount of children that are being trafficked and the number of pedophiles.
It sounds like those children being trafficked appreciate the director reviewing the files. You said you don't know the number of times Trump's name appears in the files, so it could at least be 1,000 times. Is that right?
The number is a total misleading factor. We have not released anyone's name in the Epstein files that has not been credible.
That he fired a dozen counterintelligence agents who were investigating Trump's classified document retention, and he did it just days before the United States launched major military operations against Iran. And then Democrats played a video of Patel himself from before he was FBI director, standing in front of cameras and demanding the immediate release of Epstein's client list. They played his own words back at him while he sat there defending the exact redactions and delays he is now overseeing. The contradiction could not have been more stark. And Patel had no answer. Eric Swalwell, one of the Democrats on the committee, looked at him and delivered a warning that will echo through every future hearing. He said, "We will interpret your evasiveness as an indication of guilt." Those words were not casual. They were not rhetorical. They were a formal notice that every time Patel dodged a question, every time he refused to answer, every time he hid behind legal technicalities, the committee would take that as evidence that he has something to hide. And Patel? He refused to recuse himself from Epstein-related decisions. He said, "I don't give a damn what they say about me." But the record is being built. The testimony is on the record. The video of his own previous demands is on the record. The purge of the counterintelligence agents is on the record. And the president, watching all of this unfold, is screaming. Because every admission, every evasion, every fired agent, every video confrontation is building the most publicly available documentary record of a cover-up that the administration is most specifically motivated to prevent from reaching the most consequential accountability format. And the screaming is the behavioral confirmation that the cover-up story is reaching the proximity that the most extreme reactions most specifically signal. Let us walk through exactly what happened in that hearing, what Patel admitted, why the video confrontation was so devastating, and why the purge of the counterintelligence agents just days before the Iran war launch may be the most alarming detail of all. The hearing lasted nearly 5 hours. And in that time, Patel was grilled by Democrats from Pramila Jayapal to Eric Swalwell, each of them accusing him of hiding material showing Trump's name all over the Epstein files. The questions were direct, the answers were evasive, and the pattern that emerged was the most specific available portrait of an FBI director whose own sworn admissions are building the case against him. First, Patel admitted he had not read all of the Epstein documents. This is not a minor detail. The FBI director is the official most directly responsible for the Bureau's compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. That responsibility requires knowledge of what the files contain. An FBI director who has not read the files is an FBI director who cannot make an informed judgment about what is releasable and what is legally exempt. And that means his compliance decisions are vulnerable to the accusation that they are driven by strategic ignorance, rather than by complete knowledge of the statutory requirements. Second, Patel repeatedly said that court orders were blocking him from releasing thousands of records. This is the legal justification for the non-disclosure. But here is the problem. The court orders cited as blocking release cover specific categories of material. Yet the documented gap between the 6 million documents ordered released and the barely half that was actually produced is far larger than any specific set of court order exceptions could credibly explain. The court order's defense is transparently insufficient. It is a shield that does not cover the scale of the withholding. Third, Patel testified that the FBI has no credible information that Epstein trafficked minors to anyone beyond a narrow set of known co-conspirators. This statement enraged survivors and lawmakers who have personal knowledge of the documented scope of Epstein's network. It directly contradicts the specific testimony and evidence that credible insider accounts have been providing about the breadth of the trafficking network that the FBI investigation documented. For Patel to say this under oath is to assert something that those with direct knowledge know is false, and it is to place his credibility on a foundation that can be demolished by the very files he claims he has not read. These three admissions together create the most damaging available portrait. An FBI director who does not know what is in the files he is supposed to release, who is hiding behind court orders that do not explain the scale of the withholding, and who is making statements about the scope of Epstein's network that contradict the documented record. It is a trifecta of accountability failure. But the most devastating moment of the hearing was not Patel's admissions. It was what Democrats did with those admissions. They played a video of Patel himself from before he was FBI director, standing in front of cameras and demanding the immediate release of Epstein's client list. His words were clear. His demand was absolute. He wanted the files released. He wanted the public to see what was in them. He wanted accountability. And then they played that video back to him as he sat there defending the redactions and delays he is now overseeing. The contrast could not have been more stark. The Patel of the past, the political operative who used the Epstein files as a cudgel against his opponents, was confronting the Patel of the present, the institutional guardian who was now using every legal technicality to keep those same files from seeing the light of day. The video confrontation is the single most devastating technique available in this kind of hearing because it eliminates the most available defense for the current position. Patel could not claim that legal requirements justified the delays without the specific contradiction that his own prior words documented. A witness who previously demanded immediate release cannot claim legal necessity as the explanation for current delay. The video converts the cover-up accusation from an external charge into a self-impeachment. The witness's own prior words become the most specific evidence against his current position. Now let us talk about the counterintelligence purge, because this is where the story moves from the Epstein files to something even more alarming. CNN revealed that just days before the United States launched major military operations against Iran, Patel fired a dozen agents and staff from the counterintelligence unit that had been investigating Trump's alleged Mar-a-Lago document retention. This was not a routine personnel action. This was a purge, and law enforcement sources described it in stark terms. They said the purge gutted years of Iran threat expertise. They said it raised fears that national security investigations were being sacrificed to protect Trump politically. They said it happened just as Operation Epic Fury was beginning. Think about the timing. The counterintelligence unit that was investigating Trump's retention of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago had the most continuous operational knowledge of that case. They had institutional memory of years of investigation. They had specific expertise about the documents involved. They had specific threat assessments about what national security risks the document retention created. And that unit was fired days before the United States launched major military operations against Iran. Operations whose intelligence foundation was most directly relevant to the classified documents that included materials about military planning against Iran. The specific timing eliminates the most available coincidence defense. A post-war purge could be characterized as a reorganization in response to operational developments. A pre-war purge, days before the launch, eliminating the unit with the most specific knowledge of the documents that included Iran war planning materials, is the specific timing that most directly suggests the purge was designed to eliminate the institutional capacity most relevant to the accountability questions that the war would generate. The timing creates the specific inference that the purge served a cover-up interest in the most operationally consequential moment available, eliminating the experts who would most directly recognize the connection between the retained classified documents and the military operations those documents describe. Law enforcement sources characterizing the purge as gutting years of Iran threat expertise and raising fears that national security investigations were being sacrificed to protect Trump politically, as Operation Epic Fury began, are making the most specific inside assessment of the operational consequences. They are confirming that the timing was not coincidental. They are confirming that the purge most directly removed the institutional capacity most relevant to the specific national security moment it preceded. The counterintelligence purge is therefore the single most alarming personnel action in the entire cover-up story. It combines the Epstein file management dimension with the Iran war accountability dimension. A single personnel decision that most directly serves a cover-up interest in both domains simultaneously. Now let us talk about what this means for the president, because Trump is watching all of this unfold, and his reaction is the behavioral confirmation that the cover-up story is reaching the most sensitive targets. We have documented across this series the specific pattern of the most extreme available attacks on institutional actors being the most specific behavioral signal that accountability is reaching the most proximate threat to the interests the attacks are designed to protect. The screaming reaction to Patel's hearing admissions, to each documented testimony statement that builds the cover-up record, is the most specific available behavioral expression of a president whose power most directly depends on those admissions not building that record in the most publicly available format. The intensity of the defensive reaction is the most direct behavioral measure of the specific threat that the uncovering most specifically represents. A cover-up story that was not reaching the most sensitive targets would not produce the most extreme presidential screaming reaction. A cover-up story that is building the documentary record of complicity in the most consequential accountability domains produces exactly the screaming reaction that the headline describes. It is the behavioral expression of someone watching the most carefully managed cover-up story become the most specific public accountability record. Democrats playing Patel's own previous demand for release video back at him as he defended the current delays is the single most devastating confrontation technique in the entire testimony. It eliminates the legal necessity defense by establishing through Patel's own prior words that he did not believe legal requirements justified the same delays when he was making the opposite argument. It converts the cover-up accusation from an external charge into a self-impeachment. The witness's own prior testimony becomes the most specific evidence against his current position. An independent accusation of hypocrisy can be dismissed as partisan. A direct video confrontation of the witness's own words creates the evidentiary record that most directly establishes the contradiction through the witness's own documented prior statement. The witness cannot dismiss the contradiction as partisan characterization because the contradiction is documented in the witness's own voice, in his own words, from his own prior public advocacy. The counterintelligence purge, firing a dozen Mar-a-Lago investigation agents just days before the Iran war launch, is the single most alarming personnel action in the entire cover-up story. Its specific timing eliminates the most available coincidence defense and establishes the most specific connection between the institutional cover-up interest in the documents case and the operational moment that most directly required the expertise the purge eliminated. A post-war purge could be characterized as a reorganization response to operational developments. A pre-war purge days before the launch, eliminating the unit with the most specific knowledge of the documents that included Iran war planning materials, is the timing that most directly suggests the purge was designed to eliminate the institutional capacity most relevant to the accountability questions that the war would generate. Swalwell's warning, "We will interpret your evasiveness as an indication of guilt," is the most specifically targeted congressional accountability pressure in the entire testimony. It invokes the adverse inference principle that converts the evasive testimony pattern from a manageable political inconvenience into the most damaging implicit admission. It establishes that the cover-up accusation is gaining credibility from the specific evasion it is meeting. The adverse inference warning invokes the most basic evidentiary logic of a cover-up investigation context. A witness who has nothing to hide will provide the most forthcoming answers to the most direct questions. Evasiveness in the face of direct questions most specifically suggests the information being evaded will be the most damaging if disclosed. The warning converts every subsequent evasion from a protected witness response into specific evidence building the cover-up case. Here is what we need to watch as this story continues to develop. The congressional subpoena enforcement will determine whether the House oversight subpoena for Patel's sworn deposition produces the specific oath-bound testimony context that most directly tests the hearing admissions against the most comprehensive questioning. The prohibited case file situation will determine whether any oversight body examines how Patel has managed the case files containing his own phone records and the counterintelligence investigation materials since becoming director. The counterintelligence purge accountability will determine whether the specific firing produces the formal congressional or inspector general investigation that the law enforcement sources' concerns most directly warrant. And the overall cover-up story trajectory will determine whether the simultaneous pressure from the Epstein file management accountability and the Iran war national security accountability produces the convergent pressure that forces the most comprehensive testimony about both dimensions simultaneously. Here is the bottom line. In nearly 5 hours of House testimony, Kash Patel admitted he had not read all of the Epstein files. He admitted court orders were blocking thousands of records from release. He testified that the FBI has no credible information about Epstein's network beyond narrow co-conspirators in a way that enraged survivors and lawmakers. He was confronted by Democrats with his own previous video demanding immediate Epstein client list release as he defended the current delays. Jamie Raskin and Pramila Jayapal accused him of participating in a giant cover-up, arguing Trump's name appears repeatedly in the files and the refusals are about protecting powerful men. CNN revealed Patel fired a dozen counterintelligence agents investigating Trump's Mar-a-Lago document retention just days before the Iran war launch. Law enforcement sources said the purge gutted Iran threat expertise and raised fears national security was being sacrificed to protect Trump politically. Swalwell specifically warned that evasiveness will be interpreted as an indication of guilt, and Patel refused to recuse himself from Epstein-related decisions, saying, "I don't give a damn what they say about me." Trump screams because every Patel admission, every evasion, every purged agent, every video confrontation with his own prior words, is building the most publicly available documentary record of the cover-up story that the administration is most specifically motivated to prevent from reaching the most consequential accountability format. The subpoena enforcement is developing. The prohibited case file situation is being watched. The counterintelligence purge accountability is pending. And the overall cover-up story is reaching its most consequential moments.